Welcome to another episode of Amplified Marriage. Today is Season 2, Episode 4. We are in our Communicate series, so glad you could join us.
Welcome to another episode of Amplified Marriage. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Brian.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, as you've heard us say before, grab a coffee, grab a tea, a snack, turn on those Christmas lights, get comfy and cozy. So glad you joined us today.
We appreciate when you chime in, when you leave us emails, all of those things. We appreciate you connecting with us. So in case you missed last week's podcast, we talked about a passive-aggressive communicator.
That's right.
And all of the pitfalls and some of the ways that you can maybe step out of being a passive aggressive communicator. If that's who you see yourself are, or you identify with those things, just go into the show notes. You'll see and just listen to the podcast. It'll give you some really great tips on how to maybe work your way out of that, or how to start communicating a little bit differently. You know, it was at when they said when they went to the moon, 3 small steps to all that, whatever the jazz that they said. It is very much like that when you're married.
Yeah.
And you're having to work through communication problems. If you know only one way to communicate, and that's just the way that you communicate.
Right. You know what you know.
You know what you know. And so there's the thing that we always say is you don't know what you don't know. Today, we want to help you a little bit more and know a little bit more and be a better communicator. So on that note, we are talking about the aggressive communicator. That's right. I am a recovering aggressive communicator. I say recovering.
I would agree.
And I say recovering, and there's occasionally parts of me that are still that aggressive communicator.
Right.
Wouldn't
That's fair.
you?
I would agree. And I think that there's still times where I want, or I see myself easily like being able to fall back into the passive.
Right.
And sometimes even the passive aggressive, right? Because I don't think you're just one style. I think that in that unhealthy style, you absolutely can revert to the other unhealthy styles. Do you know what I mean? Like there are times where I was, totally operating in passive. And there were times where I tried to change the outcome and then went into passive aggressive communication, right?
Absolutely. And so the definition really of an aggressive communicator is a style in which individuals express their feelings and opinions and advocate for their needs in a way that violates the rights of others. The aggressive communications are verbally or physically abusive. The core belief that they have is that they matter more and they're more valuable and you don't matter at all.
Yep.
Or they won't say that to your face.
Right. But their actions depict that.
From my experience as being an aggressive communicator, I communicate.
I'm just going to jump in. When did you first recognize that was how you communicated? Like, was it something I said, or was it something you read?
It was literally a mixture of all of the above. You know, like you have people in your life that at some point are just going to tell you, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, that's the worst way to communicate. Like, how do you talk to your wife like that? Like, I know Greg was like, Brian, you can't say that. You can't talk like that. Right. Like my buddy Greg, or my pastor, or someone that was around me, or one of my, like, you can't say those things to people. And I don't like even reading some of the deep, dark things about the aggressive communicator. I know for a fact that I wasn't like a really hardcore to the core type of aggressive communicator. I flip-flop back between the two.
Right.
And even as we were kind of mentally preparing these things, I don't think it was like
you were never physically abusive ever.
No. And I don't think that it wasn't just one thing. It was a series of things in me changing my perspective, I think.
Right.
And being like, hey, I'm willing to change because I want my wife to not feel this way when I talk to her.
Right.
Or my kids. If I look back to how hard I was on my kids because I was an aggressive communicator in some areas, I was pretty hard on my kids when they were young. And, you know, I say this before, I've had to apologize to my kids for bad behavior.
Oh, yeah, we both have.
Right, and just say things like that. But kids bounce back and they still love you and they still care for you. But, you know, wives, the ones that I was, you know, she still remembers those times when I was an aggressive communicator.
Right.
And so there is a tendency, because that's my type of personality, to revert back to that if I'm under
Stress.
But like at this point in my life, I can take a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And it takes me a lot to really get to that place where I've lost it or I'm really temperamental. But
so where would you say that comes out of?
It comes out of a place of fear. For me, it came out of a place of fear. It comes from a place where you don't want to be vulnerable. And because you, in the past, for many years, I viewed vulnerability as a sign of weakness.
Right.
And I didn't want to appear weak. Mm-hmm. And that's also the 8 on the Enneagram stairs. Challenging is doesn't want to be, what do they say? What the 8 is, they don't want to be controlled, but they don't need to always be in control.
That's right.
They just don't want to be controlled.
Yeah.
If I was to show weakness in the past, and sometimes even now I wrestle with this, like just where's that authenticity? Where's a genuine part of who I am? I would say that I don't want to appear vulnerable, but that's just part of being a good leader is you have to be authentic and real. And that's also being a part of a good husband. I don't have the same feelings Natalie does on the same grand scale that she does. Right?
Would you say pride?
Oh yeah, because there's always a sense of pride in everything that a man does.
Right.
Always, no matter what.
So
it's probably the same thing for women, I would assume.
I would think so. I think it just shows up differently.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think back to times where we've communicated. Now, granted, I was communicating in that passive style then.
Yeah.
And so it's like 2 unhealthy styles trying to communicate, right? Like, it's like
passive and
negative
and aggressive.
Right? Like it's an unhealthy and an unhealthy expecting a positive.
Right.
Right? It doesn't work like that. So I think that I often came across to you where it really put you, I didn't allow you to be vulnerable because if you were vulnerable, I'd use it against you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so if I came to you, you just had your walls and your hackles up always because you're like, you're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. Like I'm going to tell myself what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It always came across like that just me even approaching you, like not even asking you to do anything, you had that defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely was a sense of pride that who are you to tell me what to do?
Right.
And that what you're pointing out to me is a problem and that's a weakness.
Right.
Right. To you pointing that out to me as a weakness. And so aggressive communicators, and I can say even as we're going to go through some of these things, is you try and dominate others. I can say that I've tried to do that just by being bigger or like I'm a big personality. Right. I know that, you know that.
Yep.
Others know that. I'm healthy in how I approach, but it used to be that it was my way or the highway. And sometimes I'm still my way or the highway, but I will try and dominate or I've never really used like humiliation. No.
I can honestly say you have never said or done anything. Because remember, I forget which one it was in our series where we're like, we could put it on. So if we were at a party or we were out with friends or just in the general public, I mean, we were like the model couple.
Right.
In front of everybody else. So there was no way that I would do anything to humiliate you because then that would draw attention to we've got issues.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you never did either. So we could be lovey-dovey and we could be newlyweddy in I just made it up in front of other people. So for that one, but that's my experience with you. That's not to say that someone else doesn't use humiliation.
Yeah, it doesn't use humiliation to control someone. I definitely used to criticize and blame others.
Yes, you did.
For my shortcomings, or you pointed out that vulnerability. I would definitely use that. Right. I think I was impulsive.
You're very impulsive.
I'm still impulsive, but it's more of a calculated. I call it strong decision making.
Right. And there's times where
you don't call it that.
Well, there's times where I'm super indecisive.
Yeah. Like, okay. So I'm going to tell you a story. All of our listeners going to Tim Hortons that has had the same thing on their order or on their menu for as long as we've been together can still be a challenge with her because she's like, I want a double. Then as soon as she sees the menu, it's like, she's like, well, what if I want to try this? Or maybe I want to try this. I'm like, you're going back to the double. There's no wavering.
I should just bite the bullet and just get one of everything I'm thinking I might want, because at some point in the day I might want it.
Can I have the whole menu, please? So my wife can be less decisive, or so she can be more decisive.
There we go.
So I am very impulsive in the fact that I make decisions quickly. And
Right.
it used to be impulsive. Hey, I would say things or do things that were just,
Or you'd spend money
oh
impulsively.
boy. Yeah, that was a bad one. We don't need to talk about that in public.
Ooh, right.
My money spending was very impulsive.
Yeah.
Ooh, I want that thing. And so I would go out and do it.
Exactly. Whether we could afford it or not, which caused a whole nother level of stress.
Oh man, added all kinds of frustration on there.
Yeah. Have low frustration tolerance. You had, and to a point now, I think you've reined or honed your temperament in maybe. And so while you still have sort of like low tolerance for certain things.
Don't lie to me. If you ever lie or are hypocritical, I really struggle with those.
Right. But as a whole of communicating, I feel like you're not as bullheaded.
Thank goodness.
Now.
Because it caused so many problems because you wouldn't even have, like, if you have children, they're frustrating.
Yeah.
They're so frustrating. And so you have to like figure out your tolerance level for where is going to be. Because the moment they wake up sometimes when I was the way I was, even now, like sometimes you're just like, I'm tired.
Right.
I didn't wake up well. I got a headache, whatever it is. You're just frustration.
Right.
Life is sometimes just frustrating, especially when you have small children.
Yes.
Right. Sometimes you would speak in a loud, demanding and overbearing voice. That was pretty much my norm to get my point across.
That's right. And so when we would have conflict of any sort, you would elevate and then like, it's one thing for you because you are passionate about like your loud voice comes through when you're passionate about something. Mm-hmm. So when you're preaching and things like that, or you're talking with people and you're super passionate about what you do, that's not the same
what we're talking
kind,
about.
Not
you're
not
trying,
the
when
same
I'm trying,
kind.
Are you saying when I try and say dominate a situation or I feel like I've been under attack, you're talking about that, like I get more loud demanding and like I'm like my way is the right way?
So, and then I just thought of this situation. I'm pretty sure you mentioned it in one of the podcasts where you had to apologize to our oldest because you just kind of bulldozed over him in that one thing. And it was that time where the other two were crying on the couch.
Oh yeah.
I'm
that would be like,
100%
honestly, that was what, 3 weeks ago?
Oh no, that was longer than that. But in that whole thing where I was bringing it up that, hey, I think it was a little harsh, you got really loud.
Yeah.
Right? Do you remember that?
You got louder. And I think, again, it was because I knew I was tired and I knew I was wrong.
Right.
There was no even way for me to salvage my rightness on this because there was no rightness. There was just wrongness. I remember that. So oftentimes people that are aggressive will also act rudely or threateningly. I don't know that I was very threatening, but that this is...
Well, I guess you could appear to someone else looking in. I was never threatened by you at all. I know that you tried to like...
I'm the man.
Right? Like...
you will listen.
But that didn't work for me. So...
They don't listen well. That is common.
Yeah.
They interrupt frequently.
Statements.
Well, even going back to the interrupt frequently, oftentimes an aggressive personality listens with the intent to reply, not with the intent to understand.
That's right. Say that again, because that's really key.
A lot of communicators, aggressive communicators, maybe even more than others, listen with the intent to reply, not with the intent to understand.
That's right.
That's a common saying we said when I was in sales is that you need to listen to hear what the customer wants. And then when we teach and when we coach couples, like listen to what you're supposed to say. Mm-hmm. Like there's something that they're saying that's very important here. That's right. And so you just have to do it. And there was a lot of you statements. You did this. You did that. And
which is why I responded the way that I did. Because if you hadn't done it like that, or you hadn't approached me like that, then I wouldn't have flown off the handle.
Yeah,
or I wouldn't, like, you fill in the blanks with whatever comes to your mind. But there's never like, hey, I see that I responded that way and I get how I came across there. There's there's no self-reflection. Right. Yeah.
And so they have an overbearing or intimidating posture. Whenever I would get threatened in my vulnerability or weakness, I would get into that position.
You were thinking you were asserting yourself. Do you remember that story when we were newlyweds and you wanted to move to Alberta? I think we both knew we wanted to move to Alberta.
Oh, you want to bring that up, do you?
And you wanted to go to Edmonton and I wanted to go to Red Deer. And you puffed like, if you could imagine a peacock.
Wow.
Wow. People just need a visual because I'm visual. So a peacock whose feathers are going to get ruffled, he puffs himself up to appear
Bigger than he is.
Bigger than he is, or more beautiful. I don't know what his thought process is, but he fluffs himself up. And so I remember you coming at me all big and macho. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, and you laughed.
I laughed.
Loud.
Now, I don't recommend that to any of you. Like, I'm laughing now. This is awful. Let me just get it out. Okay. So one of the reasons why I laughed was because, first off, I had never, ever seen you do that. And to me, it was so far out of your normal character that it was comical. Again, thank goodness you weren't physically violent, because I could understand how one could snap then if someone was laughing at you in that moment.
Wow.
So I'm grateful that you didn't, but I met you in the hallway and I'm like, oh, you're going to do that, right? Bring it on. Now, I'm 5'1" and
right.
you're 5'9". So there's a huge height difference between you and I,
Yeah.
right? So that's definitely one.
You just want to appear bigger than you are.
That's right.
The pattern of aggressive communication is that these individuals, like people who are aggressive in their communication, become alienated from others. No one wants to be around them because they're just so aggressive all the time. They alienate others.
That's
they
right.
alienate themselves from others. They generate fear and hatred in others because they're just so.
Well, no one wants to approach.
And the thing is I had a pleasant personality when I wanted to.
That's right.
But I was miserable. I was grouchy, and it was mostly directed at you.
Yeah.
Other people thought I was a superstar, but you didn't. You knew the truth.
I did. I think you're a superstar now.
Oh, gee, thanks. Now.
Right? Always blaming others instead of owning their issues. This is huge across the board. Doesn't matter what communication style you are.
Own your issues.
Own your issues. Don't justify your behavior for something your partner said or did.
Yeah.
You are responsible for you.
That's right. The aggressive communicators will say things like believe, or will say or believe or behave like I'm superior and I'm right.
Yeah,
and
you never actually vocalize that.
No, they may not say it, but their behavior will show that they think you're inferior and that you're wrong.
That's right.
I'm loud, I'm bossy, I'm pushy.
Yep.
Right? I can dominate and intimidate you. They actually believe that because of the style that they like, and people will back down.
Yeah.
So that just feeds their need to just
That's
be
right.
bigger. I can violate your rights. I'll get my way no matter what.
That's right.
You're not worth anything.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Right? You're not worth, like.
Do you identify with that?
Do I?
Yeah.
I don't think.
Like, thinking back.
I think I have to get to a certain, I had to, not now. Like, the Lord's done a lot of work in my heart and really repaired some wounds I've had, and I've healed over the years, and I've talked things through, and we've really talked some things through. But there, to say someone, I think it was more,
felt like I wasn't worth anything.
And the way I treated you sure did not give you much hope that, oh yeah, he really values me.
Right. I just felt unappreciated and undervalued.
Yeah. Right. Underappreciated. And I don't think that I ever felt that someone didn't have value.
Right.
I just think that, or that they're not worth anything. I think just like your opinion means nothing to me.
Right.
To me, that was like, I no longer care about your opinion. That means nothing to me.
Right.
So you're not worth anything. It's all your fault.
Oh.
And sometimes I would react instantly.
That's right.
I'm entitled.
Again, back to not owning your part.
Yeah, right?
Right?
Own it. The way someone, again, what someone else says to you, your wife, your partner, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, when they say something to you and you say something like, well, I reacted instantly, that's your choice.
That's right.
You are in control of your emotions. You're in control of your feelings. You can control that.
Yeah.
Said, I'm entitled, or you owe me, or I own you. And some of these things, like the I own you, isn't something that maybe, unless you're really, really super unhealthy, and you're already in an abusive relationship, you can look at someone else and say, I own you. But a lot of times it's the attitude that you're carrying that says, hey,
That's
I own
right.
you.
Or you'll never get better than this, which I think is a trap that keeps a lot of people in that cycle. You've heard us mention before Danny Silk and his book, Keep Your Love On. I love how he talks about an aggressive communicator. He says, or he likens them to a T-Rex. He says that usually an aggressive communicator will end up in a relationship with a passive one, which in our case is exactly that.
What happened?
Right? And one thinks like, how on earth does that manage? Like, how does that happen when they're like almost polar opposites? And he says the aggressive one matters. Well, they agree on something. The aggressive one matters, and the passive one believes they don't.
Right.
So both are motivated by fear and selfishness, and both are powerless. I thought that was so fascinating because when you read about the unhealthy, it was like, who would want to be with any one of them?
Right. And even when you're in the middle of it, you feel helpless in the fact that I want you to change, and I feel powerless to change you. Yeah. Because I'm the controlling one. I'm trying to control you. You want me to change because you want the relationship to be better, but I'm not changing. My behavior isn't changing. The way I talk to you wasn't changing. So it never gets any better. Yeah. You know, really, guys, like if you think about this, the aggressive types, they're all destructive.
Oh, big time.
Passive communicators, aggressive communicators, they're all destructive in their own way.
Right.
Right. And so, but being an aggressive communication style really hurts people's feelings a lot more, and can destroy relationships a lot differently than the other two possibly can.
That's right. I just wanted to say also, like, just as a comparison, Danny Silk says, if we can line up a communication food chain, so he says the aggressive communicator would be at the top and the passive communicator would be the one cowering at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And he says the craziest thing happens where they end up together, right? And the aggressive communicator will get what he needs by taking it, and the passive communicator will get what she needs by giving away body parts, essentially. Wow. Right? In the end, the passive communicator will no longer exist, and the aggressive communicator will still be hungry.
So how I heard that is that the aggressive communicator, like my style of communication back when I was unhealthy, is never sated, always needs more to feel like he's in control. He's the most dominant. Right. He's the biggest, the biggest lion. And
and the passive one usually is the one that shuts down, cowers.
And I will just batter you, the passive communicator, until you finally just cave and you are no more. Like your personality is gone. Right. Who you are is gone.
You're essentially like an emotional corpse.
You're just a shell.
Right. And that's so, I mean, when you read about it and you have that visual, it's quite sad.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these destructive ones are sad in their own way. So
big time.
If you're hearing this and you're like, man, I don't want, like, this is me. And you're like, man, you guys are hitting home. Yeah. Or someone, your spouse is, your partner is, and you're like, this is hitting home. You can change. I can change. I changed. Yes. Things changed, man.
You sought help.
I sought help. I went and I surrounded myself by people that wanted to succeed in their relationship, and they helped me succeed in mine.
That's right.
Right? So it's being, again, surrounded by the right people. Yep. But you can change and you can be better. And it starts with a few questions. And some of those questions are, am I putting my spouse down?
Right.
When I'm talking in an aggressive manner, is the tone, like, don't worry, don't just think about the words, think about the tone. Yep. Is the tone, the words putting that person down?
That's good.
Am I actually able to listen to when my spouse is talking?
Right. Because there's listening and there's hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that womp, womp, womp.
Yeah.
Or there's actually listening.
Right. When Natalie is talking to me, I'm looking with the intent to understand what she's saying, to hear what she's saying, to be a part of what she's saying to me, not just responding for the sake of responding. Right. Like, oh no, I'm working up my next part to the case as opposed to understanding what she's saying to me.
That's right. I think eye contact is huge.
Yeah. Put your phone down.
If you're in the middle of doing something or you're like clicking an email, obviously your mind is focused on that. Yeah. But as we're communicating, just making sure that you're making eye contact with your spouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, I want to know that I have your full attention. Is that the right way of saying it? Yeah. When I'm talking to you.
Yeah. So I love now, after being married for a long time, you're like, hey, put your phone down. I want to talk about something. Yeah. Okay. So my phone goes down, face down. Yeah. Do not disturb. We're going to have a chat. I think the next one is, can I take criticism?
Right. That was a hard one for you for a long time. Man. Because I think you likened criticism to you as a failure as a human being.
Yeah. When someone would criticize me, this is even before the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I have a really good boss that is willing to challenge me, a really good wife that's willing to challenge me, really good friends that are willing to challenge me. And I say challenge because when you get criticized, it's a challenge for you to make quick, healthy decisions in that moment when someone, so they challenge me in a good way. So you're putting yourself in a position to be doing that. But I had to change my perspective from one of what they're saying and doing is meant to hurt me. Yeah. And how do I respond in this? Because anger is fine. You can be angry. It's what you do with the anger that's the sin, not the fact that you felt the emotion. That's right. Anger isn't a sin. Yep. And so I oftentimes will respond with sin and just bad behavior. And the way I would respond would be good. And so how you respond is good. So I had to learn. I flipped the script on myself now and said, look, I want to be the first one that asks for critique to make me better. Like I want to be the first one. And sometimes I take it well. Other times I'm like, you're wrong.
That's right.
But
well, you're human, right?
I want to put myself in a position to be the one that takes criticism in a way that makes me better. Right. Because if what Natalie says to me as a husband says, you don't communicate very well in this area, not only will that affect how I communicate with her, if I get better at it, it affects how I communicate with my children. Yes. It affects how I communicate with my parents and my employees at work. So everything that I do, even me getting better as a pastor and learning how to be a better leader, means that I'm able to lead better at home and vice versa. That's right. And so everything you're doing makes you better if you're willing to see that the perspective is that people want the best for me, not the worst.
There you go.
Right?
Preach.
Do I hurt my people? Do I hurt people with my words? Do you hurt your spouse when you speak? Right. If you're saying and you're looking at, you're kind of weighing the checks and balances right now, and you're like, man, I say more things that are hurtful than helpful, then you need to reevaluate how you communicate. Am I blinded by the bad effects of I have freedom of speech and I can say what I want?
Right. Whenever I want.
That's baloney. Like, just grow up, think your way through this. There's a way to be able to critically think your way through it and have a proper argument without just being a jerk about it. Yeah. Right. And a lot of things that you'll do with your family, and because they push on the emotional buttons and they know where to push and how to push, and their frustration level is really high, man, those are all things that just you need to adjust and to address.
That's right.
And be better at. Right. That's
right.
Any final words?
I think you've covered it really well, actually. And the fact that, I mean, most of these people don't know what you were like before. So for them hearing it, they're probably like, not that guy.
Yeah, because and that's the thing. And people that know me now. Yeah. Right?
Didn't know you in that time.
We should have Star and Greg on the show one time and be like, hey, Greg, you remember how I was? Yeah. And he'll just chuckle in his gentle, calm way. And he'll be like, yeah, I remember.
Right. But you were a tool and I was a tool.
And we were tools together, but the one thing we weren't willing to do was just give up.
No.
And we were willing to fight for the marriage, even though there's a few times I felt like, man, I don't have it in me anymore to keep going. Yeah. You felt the same, but we did. Right? And that's the big thing. Yeah. So if you have been enjoying this podcast, and we know that you've been liking this and you've been listening and sending us emails, we really appreciate that. If you have any, and you really just want to challenge something we said, or want us to add something onto what we said, or you just want us to maybe pray for you or maybe coach you through something, you can reach us on Facebook, on Instagram, the messaging. We'd love to hear from you. If you do have a topic or a subject or something that you want to talk about, we would love to hear from you.
Reach out for help.
If
you find yourself stuck, or you find yourself in an abusive situation, get help.
Right. Absolutely. And so if you do have a topic or something you want us to talk about, please email us at amplifiedmarriage@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you get a chance, go to the website, www.amplifiedmarriage.com, and sign up for the newsletter so you can be in the know as to what's happening. But as you've heard us say many times before, we believe that marriage can be reset,
refreshed,
recharged,
and restored.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Talk to you soon.